In transformation, when 2% of a population begin to think in more liberated and spiritually open ways, a new level of consciousness will awaken, bringing about a new reality for the total population. Join me, Jael McLean, confidence coach, business owner, musician, health and fitness enthusiast, transformational instigator, and your host of the 2% podcast in creating a new reality of spiritual awareness, confidence, and authenticity. Welcome to the 2% podcast, your source for empowerment, expansion, and elevation. Today I'm joined by my friend, Master Certified Coach, and former corporate leader, Laurie Schible.
Hello. Thanks
So
for
glad
having
you're here.
me. Yeah. Love it.
So, Laurie, this season we have been talking about what we're experiencing out in the world and how to create an impact. And
yeah, I love that. Hello.
So I wanted you to speak into what your experience is. And we've been talking, and actually, let me take it back a little bit. I met Laurie 2021.
I think so.
Right after the pandemic.
Yeah.
You also work with Redesign Trainings through the Healing Angels organization. And you were in the background while I was in the redesign training.
Yes. I was a silent observer.
Yes. And so I got to meet you at the very end.
Yeah.
And realized I was actually kind of horrified.
That I was watching your
mortified.
whole journey.
Yes. That, you were in the background and you knew me, and there were people that knew me very well.
Yes.
And I had no idea.
And here we are.
And you still chose to be my friend.
Clearly I got it and I liked what I heard.
Yeah.
Yes. I love
So
it.
it was awesome that you were there and you got to support my journey in my transformation through that work.
Yeah. Well, and you were journeying with my husband. So
That's
it was
right.
it was a really interesting dynamic for me, right? Of going through that and being an observation of his journey and then getting to know his teammates and his family along the way, which I'm so grateful that you were one of them. Yeah.
It was an awesome journey.
Yes. Yes.
So what are you experiencing in the world, and how do we create an impact?
Yeah. What are we experiencing in the world? Okay, that's a gigantic question, actually. So the first thing I would say about that is it is actually all about perspective, right? Yeah. So what I can tell you, what I experience in the world, I experience love, I experience connection, I experience a lot of opportunity, creativity, miracles every day, prosperity. I choose to see the beautiful things in the world. Now, does that mean that I don't see all the other stuff happening? Absolutely not, right? I also am in observation of the disconnection, the isolation, the burnout, the stress, the overwhelm, all the things that are happening, right? And it's been a really interesting cycle. Like we are actually living in a really interesting time. And I think that it is no coincidence that we all are here alive in this period. I do think we're all here for a reason. And with everything that's happening in the world, and as tough as it can feel for a lot of people, there is also an awakening. There is also what kind of feels like a death and a rebirth, right? For a whole lot of us, whether we want it or not, it's happening, right?
Yeah, there's been a massive amount of change in the world in the last 24 months.
Yeah. And honestly, like for me, the whole pandemic, like going into lockdown, kind of forcing us into really what was isolation, was also in other ways a gift, because it forced us to slow down. Like we were on a freight train that was not stopping, right? And I mean, my years in the corporate world, like that was, for me, it was that constant train of burnout I was in the doing. First of all, like I didn't know how to be. I was so in the doing working so many hours nonstop, and I was on the freight train so much so that felt normal. And I knew it wasn't. And I would go like through the roller coaster, right? Of like in and out of burnout and through the cycle until I actually learned some skills, which also included learning like how to create firm boundaries and building my fence lines, right?
Yeah.
All the things. And for me, I left the corporate world 5 years ago. I started going through all of my certifications and everything while I was still in that world. So I was able to apply some of that. And it was a big wake up call for me, but it took me going through and taking myself in the trenches of personal development to actually acknowledge it and to see it and to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right. So many of us are in it and don't even realize what's happening.
Right. And I can definitely relate. I also left the corporate world last year after going through my training and realizing like, wow, I want to go after my dreams. And I carved out a fantastic career path for myself.
Yeah.
And I also didn't realize that burnout and that pace.
Yeah.
For me, it was just the norm. And I didn't realize that I had that Sunday night anxiety of, or what I called Monday morning anxiety started on Sunday nights until I was done and out of it. And it was like, oh my gosh, it's Sunday night and I don't have anxiety about tomorrow morning. And I went to go work for myself.
Yeah.
And that was my choice was I wanted to be in this work and doing this self-development and continuing to take myself on and through continued education as well into personal development and transformation and ontological studies of this beingness and being in this work.
It is. And most people who are in burnout don't even realize that they're in it.
Yeah.
Just for the exact experience that you're describing, right? When I left, it took me, in hindsight, I did not know this in real time. It took me a year to actually undo that. And I went through the transformational training. I started it right after I actually walked away from the corporate world. And in that training, there is so much about that teaches you how to like live in high commitment, 100% commitment to yourself, owning your responsibility. There's a lot of doing. And the essence of it is to start with your way of being. Yeah, I had no concept. Of like, be what? Who do you want me to be? Like, I did not get that. And my training was very different from most people's because through that course of that training, I actually learned how to be. I actually learned how to pause, how to sit still in my own quiet and listen to myself, tune back into my body. And I had no idea how worn out I was until a year later when I realized like, wow, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. And it's that corporate, the corporate demand. And it's incredible what I worked with incredible people. I miss the people so much.
Yeah.
And teams that, the demands continued, that bar would raise and I'm tapping the table. That bar would be continually raised and teams of people would come together and get the work done. And we would get to celebrate that. And then it was like, okay, well, they got this done. Let's see if they can get this done.
Right.
So it was always like
always
more,
something.
more,
and
that push.
Totally. Yeah. And so like what's happening in the world. So in the process of all of this, we are overworked, overspent, right? Just over-consuming, over-exhausted. And the pandemic literally hit the pause button on all our lives around the world. Yeah. So we were forced to pause. And that was excruciatingly uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? And what it did is it actually helped to show us where we're totally disconnecting, what vices we're using to just numb out, right? I mean, everything that we do or that we avoid doing is so that we can avoid feeling something or how we think something is going to make us feel, right? And feeling is all about being. Our essence of being is how we're feeling. And it's really interesting because there's so many amazing things that have happened in the world, right? And what we've done is gone to a place of like high cognition. So we've all been deeply conditioned and trained to live in our heads. And what happened over time, and this is really like over the last 100, right? Industrial Revolution. And then we started clocking in and clocking out, and it became, right? So then we just started do, action. And then in came, technology, like all the things that required a lot of our brain power. Fascinating things, amazing things that have evolved us. Yeah. And in the process of that, it hasn't come without circumstances and a toll, right? And the cost for us is while we started operating from our heads, we lost connection from ourselves and our bodies, our own innate wisdom, our own intuition. And that for me is what I've been on a journey of tapping back into. Yeah. And where so many people go through life and are like, okay, seemingly on the outside, I have it all. I've got the success. I got all the things. I got 2.5 kids and a house and the picket fence. Yep. And I got, right? Everything we've been deeply conditioned to want or desire. A lot of us have gone that path because we've been told that's what we want. Yeah. Because we've never slowed down enough to recognize what is it I actually want, right? So there's a deep conditioned level that's happening there, and it's taken us fully out of the body experience.
And so we've talked about, again, with Chris Delgado and in several episodes, to bring it back to be, do, have, you're speaking into we're conditioned to do, have, and then be. If I do enough, then I can have the stuff and the money and the house and the cars. And then I will be happy, and then I will be successful, and I will be the millionaire, the business owner.
Right.
And you're talking about we get to take a step back and bring it the beingness first, and then the doingness, then bring the doingness in.
Absolutely.
And then we can have.
Yeah. I mean, we're operating backwards, right? And the irony of what we don't recognize is that in order for us to live a happy life, we have to start with happiness.
Happiness, yeah.
It all starts with happiness, right? And that's a big part of the work I do is in mindset mastery and emotional mastery. And it really all starts with our own thoughts, right? And part of this kind of the big disconnect, right? And then the pandemic automatic created pause button helped us recognize how disconnected we were, and in turn also created more isolation and disconnection, right? So we've got this layer upon layer, and a lot of people coming back in are starting to recognize wait, this isn't, I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be unhappy. I don't want to feel these things. And I'm no longer okay operating the way that I used to be operating.
I don't want to be disconnected. I don't want to be so busy.
Yeah. And so for me to step back, why I do the work that I do in the world is I firmly believe that by creating deeper human connection, that is actually how we heal the world. And the only way that we can connect, right? We're human beings. We're not human doings, right? We are emotional beings. We are meant to feel. And the only way that we can feel is to connect. And it takes us connecting to ourselves first and really owning what's true and real for us. Right. And again, and I know y'all have experienced this, right? Y'all have felt this. The moment you are open and vulnerable, connection is felt. And some people are like, ooh, tap into it. Ooh, that feels so unnerving and unsettling. Let me just tap back out and, let me put my wall up, because we have been so deeply conditioned to be disconnected, to just be in the doing, to live in our heads, to ignore all the emotions. And also we've been taught that emotions are bad.
Yeah.
Well, all emotions are valid, and they're actually brilliant teachers for us, right? No emotion is good or bad in truth, right? We have certain emotions we desire to feel, right? I'd rather feel joy than despair. And when I feel despair, I allow it and I learn from it because it's there for a reason. It's there to teach me something, right? So this is a whole, like, I can get on a tangent about the social conditioning because this is really like when we just kind of step back and we look at history in large, right? For the past several hundred years, right? We look at women, right? Really, we're in a space where we didn't have the right to earn money. We didn't have the right to own property. And really, like, we had to put ourselves together, dress well, and present ourselves in the best manner possible to get the best suitor possible, literally for survival, right? And that has carried through. And it's really only in recent years, like in our lifetime, Jael, we're like really in the last 50 years where women have had what we can call, quote unquote, like
some
equality,
autonomy,
right? Like we're autonomy, we're, we have
choice.
We have choice. Yeah. We have choice, right? And many women are in the work world, right? But it used to be that a woman's role was to be the child bearer, right? Be the child raiser, be the child snot, wiper and the boo-boo healer and the cooker and the cleaner and all the things, right? And conversely, right, the social conditioning has not just affected women, just as much so. Social conditioning has affected men in the space of men were expected to earn money, to get lots of property, to rise in social status, to be strong, right? So we bring that into our modern world, right? Let's face it, we've got it easy, like probably easier than we've ever had it, right? With all of our conveniences, like I feel like we are so full truly of abundance and we are rich as humans, right? Even though that's not distributed fairly. We're in a time like no other. And, men now are in a struggle of, I've been so deeply conditioned for generations that I have to be strong. I have to be the one to be the provider, to run. So the men who are open-hearted feel a struggle because they don't know where to place the emotion and feel chastised, or made fun of if they cry or express an emotion, right? So that's changing, right? We are giving space for our men to feel, for women to feel. We are giving space for men to stay home and for women to work. We're giving space for, partnerships to have combined, forces in the unpaid labor instead of women now being full-time in the workforce and still taking on the majority of the unpaid labor at home, right? Which is still an imbalance and it's shifting. Like I see that shift happening, right? Yeah. So there is a dynamic shift that is happening in our world, right? Yeah. It's getting there, right? We're not the only like snot wipers and boo-boo healers anymore, right? It goes all ways and families look all ways. Like we're evolving at a very rapid pace. And like I look at my kids' generation, right? I mean, you talk about even just sexuality, gender preference. It's like a full spectrum and there is no right or wrong, which is beautiful. And it's also really confusing as a child growing up. Like, not only am I trying to figure out like who I am in life, but I got to figure out all that too, right? So there are complexities with it too. And what we get to do is continue to connect, right? Have real, authentic conversations, create space to feel, to connect to our emotions, right? And to connect to each other as human beings, have real conversations.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much, Laurie. We'll be right back after these messages.
Guitar Wishes, where dreams with strings come true. The area's largest guitar shop and NAMM Top 100 winner, Guitar Wishes of Lincolnton. We carry your favorite Gibson, Fender, Martin, Taylor, and Epiphone instruments. We're an authorized Music Man, Sterling, Vintage, and Yamaha dealer.
I've had this problem.
Big problem.
I really needed
A good wedding planner.
And I kept searching.
and searching.
There are so many choices.
It's really hard to find one that has all the things on my list.
But I finally did it.
Yes. Thank you.
If you are looking for one as well,
Look no further.
Here's a really good one.
Just use mine.
Use mine.
I'm very satisfied.
Definitely recommend.
Problem gone.
thank you.
Welcome back to the 2% podcast. Today we're joined with Laurie Schible. And Laurie, we've been talking about beingness, be, do, have, human connection, and social conditioning. So as we're evolving and our experiences are shifting, how can we support those, or myself,
And me.
that are struggling and or feel stuck?
Yeah, totally. That is such a good question. Because let's face it, when are we not? Right? We're human. Like that's the thing for us to remember. We're all human beings here, right? Like even me as a master coach, knowing what I know, every day this happens for me too, right? It's like it's the level of like what somebody might get stuck in for like weeks, months, years. Maybe I will catch in like minutes.
Yeah.
Right? But it's always an evolution. And it is part of being human.
Yeah.
Like it is human nature. Like,
And that's what was so powerful about this work. What is so powerful about this work of transformation is not that I'm not going to get angry anymore. I'm not going to get frustrated anymore. I'm not going to get sad.
right.
It's not I just don't have these experiences anymore. They're magically gone.
Yeah,
It's
we're not robots.
mastery about how can I shift in these moments, and when things come up, when circumstances come up or challenges where I might have gone into a depression for months before prior, like now I have the tools to get myself together and get it together and self-clean and get out of these breakdowns and out of the stuckness in what now could be days or hours or minutes at times.
Yeah. And that is like, and so we're going to talk about a process that's going to help that I've put together. And literally that is step number 1 is awareness. And until we're aware, we're not aware. And it's just happening. It's going and we're in it until we're not in it anymore.
Yeah. And
right?
it's like, I didn't realize these patterns that were happening in my life.
Yeah.
I just didn't have, I didn't have an awareness around them.
Yes. So how do we support those who are stuck, who are like feeling like, I don't know how to do this, right? We have all types of levels of this. So I have a theory about this. There's really only one reason we all suffer. And it's because we try to control things that we can't control. Does that sound familiar?
Not at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no clue.
Yeah,
Can you elaborate? I've never done that in my life, ever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I'm like the Miss Control, and then I also am like super stubborn. And so, it's really great. My son inherited that too. So we're like both stubborn and just going at it with each other, both trying to control. And I'm literally in the moment and I'm like laughing I'm laughing in my head like, oh, bless him. Yep, God put him here because he is my greatest teacher. God love his stubbornness.
Yeah.
Yes. So we try to control things, right? And here's the thing. This is a huge and super valuable lesson, and it is super simple. So like, pay attention, listen up. So there are 3 things that we can never control that we all think that we can control. The first thing are other people, right? How often are we like, I just need them to, or I just wish that they would, or can't they see it? All they need to do is this.
Be this way, do this.
Right?
Live
All
up
the
to
time.
my expectation of how they should be.
Oh, yeah. Right? misery, because here's the reality. We can never, ever control other human beings, right?
Yeah.
We never have control. No matter what we think, we don't have control over others. The other thing we never have control over are situations. Circumstances happen every day, all day long. You think, I got this. I am zen and in my own world as I'm driving through rush hour traffic. And all of a sudden somebody like cuts you off, right? And you're like, mother, all of a sudden you're like, wait, what happened to my zen? Right? And all of a sudden there we are. We're in our moment. We can control the situation and we're going to have a reaction, right? Sometimes that because we're human beings who have a mass of feelings and emotions and thoughts. And the key is that we have those. It is in the speed of which we catch ourselves in the act, right? That's the work. Like, that is the big secret. That's the work. That's it. It's like, right? You can boil it all down to that.
Yeah.
Right? So we cannot control other people. We cannot control any situation or circumstance. And the other thing we can never control is our past. Yeah. So, you know how often we just look back over our shoulder and we're like, well, because this happened in my life and, this and that, I'm this way. We literally take our past and let it define us.
I had such a powerful lesson. I was staffing one of the last part twos for Redesign. I graduated and, we can come back as coaches and continue our journey. And so I was staffing and I realized, as the students are going through one of the exercises, I realized, wow, every time I revisit the past, it's always going to look the same. The past is never,
changed.
Still there.
Oh, same story.
Exactly.
Oh, different day, same story.
Exactly. Like it's never going to look any different no matter how many times I go back to it. So why do I keep going back to it?
Yeah. And the other thing is we can't change it. It's in the past. It's done and it's gone, right? And I get there's a lot of stuff that's happened that feels very real, right? It feels so true and visceral in our bodies, and it's done. So really, the past will only control you as much as you allow it to. Yeah. So that's your gift, right? Every day you let it go, because right here in this present moment, you get to decide literally who you are, your way of being, and what you're going to do from this moment.
And I've gotten to see how you said I've created so much suffering by living in the past. And those things are no longer happening to me in this moment.
Right.
Happening to me. Happening for me. Like those things they're gone, they're done. And yet here I am in my present still suffering over things that...
Suffering. It, like in Webster's dictionary, that should be the definition of suffering. Right? When we try to control shit.
Yeah.
That's it. Right? That's what happens. So here's the one thing we can control. And I know y'all are like wondering, what can I control? Because I want to control something.
Exactly.
Right? There is one thing that we all have control over, and that is our own thoughts.
Yeah.
Our own thoughts. So let's talk about this for a second. What is a thought? A thought is, first of all, something we make up. We use our own brain power, our own amazing human ability to think. We make thoughts up. Thoughts are nothing more than just words that go through our head, right? Beliefs are nothing more than thoughts. Thoughts are nothing more than words. And we control them. We can actually control our thoughts, even when it doesn't feel like it, right? Think all the like judging ways and the reminiscing and think about, I know, right? When you've been on like a spin cycle and things just keep repeating.
Yeah.
Right?
Spiral.
The spiral chain, right? Because here's the thing. We have like 60 to 80,000 thoughts in a day.
Wow.
And most of them are recycled from yesterday.
Yeah.
So in any moment, we can choose to have a different thought. So what it does take is us actually becoming aware, like getting into our conscious brain, right? And actually thinking about, what am I thinking?
Yeah.
Right? What words are going through my head? We always have control over that. And we get it really sideways when we're like, I come in and I'm like, Jael, I'm so pissed off. You're like, what happened? Oh, so-and-so said this and they did this and they did that. And I am convinced that they have wronged me and it's all because of them and I'm in a bad mood. Well, guess what? It's got nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with the thought I had in my own head and I created about what somebody said or did.
Yeah.
I want you to hear that.
This one was a tough one for me because I needed to be right about how I had it. I needed to be right about my experiences. You did this to me. These are the facts. Everyone else watched it happen. I have people backing me up on how it happened. And
actually, you needed them to be wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I need you to be wrong so that my thoughts and the way that I think are right. Right? Yeah. Again, that's just a thought. Or we could have a thought of, isn't that interesting, that thing that you're doing over there? I'm just over here in my lane, doing my thing, choosing just to stay in my peace. That's a thought too.
Yeah.
See how easy that is to just have a different thought? It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. And why, and what is it about the, the other person or what was said or the situation? What about that triggered me? And then I can go deeper and look at, well, why does this bother me?
Yeah.
What's my energy around this experience?
Yes. And we've got layered in there, right? All the self-worth conversation, self-doubt that happens. And then we all are aware of that little voice in our heads, right? That says all the nasty stuff that we would, by the way, never say out loud to another human being in our lives. Right? Because it's so nasty. So all of that judgment spiral, the way when you hear that little voice in your head that's like, oh, you're so stupid. You shouldn't do that. Oh, that's dumb. Oh, nobody's going to like you. Oh, what am I doing? Right? Go down the spiral. They're just thoughts. That's it. They're nothing more than a thought.
Yeah.
And the moment we become aware of it, now we have choice.
Yeah, right? I can observe it coming in.
Yes.
I can look at it and go, does this serve me right now? Does this serve me do I want to believe this and live into this right now? Or do I want to keep it moving and kick it out? Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always have choice. and there is a process for that, right? Because some people are like, okay, I get that, but how do I know? I'm just having these thoughts. And then 3 days later, I realize oh, wow. This happened, right? And in the beginning, when you do this, when you start to become conscious to your own thoughts, most of the time it's happening after the fact, right? And you'll notice you'll recognize the thought you're having in your head, or you will recognize how that thought is making you feel, right? So when you thought that person really pissed you off and now you're all angry and mad, it was a thought you had about it, and your thought made you angry and pissed off. So the way you're feeling is all on you and the words in your head. It still has nothing to do with anyone else or any situation. It's our thought we have about it that creates all the emotions that go on in our system.
Wow. I mean, I remember having resistance toward this and this person did this.
Totally, right?
And, and once I was able to start allowing myself to be in the possibility that maybe I'm wrong. maybe it gets
a tall order, right?
Maybe I get to be wrong, and maybe I'm not right, and maybe maybe no one's even right. We're all simply having our human experience,
and we've all been there ourselves. And we all know the person, right? We're like, God, that person is so righteous, right? And it is so hard to acknowledge for ourselves until we do the work. And then for me, it actually half the time I'm dying laughing at myself. Yeah. It's comical because I'm like, oh, I really did that.
Yeah.
I did that. Right? I actually said that out loud to a human, right? I mean, it's amazing. It's humorous to me, because again, we are human beings, right? This is a part of the beautiful, amazing complexity of being human.
Yeah. And for me, what that brings up is once I created the awareness and then I could observe the thoughts coming in and out of my head and then choose my response or reaction, then I got to incorporate this level of playfulness.
Totally.
Like, wow, I was really about to get really upset.
Yes.
And choose somebody out over XYZ that's a really tiny thing and it doesn't really matter. And then I got to incorporate like a playfulness, like either, you know, some kind of joke with myself or, you know, why am I taking this so seriously right now? Like nothing is that serious.
That is the beauty of it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to teach you all briefly just a very, very simple process on how to do this. Because there is actually a process we can use, right? On, well, okay, you're telling me to like become aware of my thoughts. What? Right? There's a process.
Laurie, we're having way too much fun today, so I think we need to do this episode as a part 1 and a part 2, and join us next week for part 2 of the 2% podcast with Laurie Schible.